I'm Stephen Rosenbaum, and this is the NYC Media Lab Data Download Podcast. This is a brief read of the weekly newsletter where those of you who like getting things digitally can just listen to my voice and watch as we quickly read through the newsletter. But if you're not a subscriber, we highly recommend that you subscribe because, among other things, it's free, and free is a good price. And secondly, the read is a little bit deeper than just the read through that we do. That being said, what we try and do every week is capture some things that we think you might have missed. We cover some news that we think is critical to our audience, but we also try and be lighthearted enough to not just be all gloom and doom. That being said, I'm not sure how I feel about the Ernie Cline Ready Player 2 book. My first reaction was that Ready Player 1 was entertaining, but certainly bleak if you paid attention to what it was promising. And then the movie was, I don't know, the movie was like all movies of books, in some ways more entertaining and in some ways significantly less interesting. So having said that, we have today on the pod a video that we put in the newsletter in which Ernie Cline, the author, is interviewed by Trevor Noah. It's very interesting. Highly recommend if you're looking for something to watch. But let's get back to the newsletter and we'll just run through it. So I really like this piece about R2D2 as a model for AI collaboration. And I like it partly because I like sci-fi, but I also like it because I think it talks about different robots and the various science fiction versions of how robots may interact with humans in the near future. It's a good read. It's refreshing and eye-opening at the same time, so highly recommend. And it's in the show notes, of course, and it's alexis.medium.com is the source. Second up in the newsletter, a pipeline for emerging tech in the newsroom. This is from ise.ac.uk. When we get through this election and we get to the inauguration and we have a new administration in place, the issues and complexities around journalism and fact and fiction and fake news and misinformation are not going to go away. Not only are they not going to go away, they're going to become, I would argue, more important and more prevalent, in part because now we have the possibility that we can talk about them publicly and not get yelled at and tweeted at and threatened, but also because there is going to be some complex conversations about whether or not the government should step in and set new rules around, for example, what's going to happen with Section 230. So having said that, I think being able to start thinking about how news journalism and media, begins to find pipelines for itself, and how technology behaves in the newsroom is timely and relevant, and really like this piece. All right, moving on to the third piece in the newsletter. This is maybe a little bit trivial, but it's clearly not. This is about Amazon reviews that were complaining about lack of smell from scented candles and how it appears that it was tied to the rise in coronavirus cases. It's an unusual place to get data from. It's a Business Insider article, but I think worth reading and worth understanding that the way that we put information out into the ecosystem and the way people see it may actually start to find new ways to discover things. So once you figure out, for example, that loss of smell is a common symptom of coronavirus, then all of a sudden you could look different places for where people would complain about smell or lack of smell. So that's our Business Insider piece. There's a terrific journalism.cuny.edu article about Mapping Black Media. This is from the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism. And very, very interesting, very important, in the what things are not going away after the administration turns over. I think we all agree that the BLM conversation that began in the middle of the summer may be less heated, but will become more important, and more the conversations around inclusion are now central to all kinds of things we all do, certainly in this community. So having said that, this map is really interesting. And I'll just read you a paragraph. It says, quote, Black media has been historically classified as newspapers, often weekly, owned by an African-American publisher that print in cities with significant Black population. We've included those, the vast majority of the list, alongside digital startups that cover niche topics, publications that serve West Indian and African audiences, radio stations, not-for-profit newsrooms, and more. Again, mapping is really powerful, and being able to see where there are resources and where there aren't, and what they look like, is really interesting. So hope you'll read it. Hope you'll go to the CUNY site, which is in our show notes, and check it out, and then hopefully comment back to us, because this is something we're thinking a lot about at the Media Lab. Okay, I'm going to put this one in the slightly unusual category. This is neurosciencenews.com. And the headline is Measuring Risk-Taking by Watching People Move Computer Mice. And I'll just read you the summary. People whose computer mouse drift towards safer option on the screen, even when ultimately they decide to take a riskier option, may be more risk avoidant than those choices would indicate. Again, much like smell-o-vision, which we talked about earlier, this is another one of those behaviors that you might not know you're transmitting. But imagine if there was an app that you could load up on your computer that would say, hey, do you know that you're risk averse? Well, I don't think of myself as risk averse. Well, your behaviors say you are. So neurosciencenews.com. Then there's the Daily Show interview with Ernie talking about his new book, which, by the way, has not gotten much buzz. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe just because at the end of the day, Ready Player One, really, I mean, while it did get mass attention, it really was something of a tween sci-fi book. That's going to make some readers mad at me. I'm sorry. That being said, I'm going to read Ready Player Two, or at least the first couple of chapters, and see how it goes. And I'm hoping that the future of Ready Player Two is not bleaker than the future of Ready Player One, which was pretty bleak. For podcasting, what we're listening to this week, happy to share and endorse Code Switch on NPR, which was named by Apple the best new podcast of 2020. Here's how they describe it. What's the Code Switch? It's the fearless conversation about race that you've been waiting for, hosted by journalists of color. Our podcast tackles the subject of race head on. We explore the impacts of every part of society, from politics to pop culture to history to sports and everything in between. It's a really terrific listen. Add it to your podcast listener tool, and decide if it's part of your regular appetite. I've listened to 3 episodes. I like it a lot. I highly recommend it. And then last but not least, in our long reads area, this is from nature.com, and the headline is, It Will Change Everything. DeepMind AI makes gigantic leap into solving protein structures. There hasn't been much talk about COVID and the speed of the medical discoveries, and but I think that there's been a purposeful decision to not talk about technology as it relates to the development of new therapies. That being said, this is a terrific read. It is long and detailed, as you'd expect in Nature. So do read it if you have the bandwidth and the time. So with that, that's kind of everything we have this week. Hope you'll read the newsletter. Hope you'll get back to us with thoughts, comments, feedback, suggestions. We're always interested in hearing what you have to say. And we're absolutely excited to see the new year arrive and tech and media and news and information begin to sort itself out. So with that, see you next week.